The champagne flute struck flesh before anyone could blink, glass exploding against the server's cheekbone in a spray of crystal and blood. Yuna's hand remained suspended in the air, perfectly steady, her red gown swirling like spilled wine across the ballroom's marble floor. "You breathed on me," she said softly, each word precise as a blade. The server collapsed, crimson streaming down her face, but no one moved. Not the security guards lining the walls, not the Seoul elite clutching their own drinks. Not even Seojoon Yeong himself, the Mafia boss whose engagement party this was supposed to be. From the service entrance, Mira Samuels witnessed her first minute in the Yeong household. Her new employer's fiancé had just shattered a woman's face over nothing. This, Mira thought, her hand tightening around her tray, is who everyone fears. But fear, Mira had learned in Port Harcourt, was just another mask people wore to hide the truth. Mira just witnessed the woman everyone fears commit violence without consequence. But she doesn't know yet that fear is exactly what Yuna wants. Because terrified people don't ask questions. If you're curious how a Nigerian maid dismantles a Korean crime queen's empire, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. And if you believe truth matters more than silence, hit subscribe. Don't just watch the exposure, be part of it. "Follow closely and listen carefully," Mrs. Lim said, her voice dropping to barely audible as they moved through the servants' corridor. The older woman's shoulders were perpetually hunched, as if she'd spent years trying to make herself smaller. Rule 1. You address her as Miss Yuna. Always. Rule 2. Never make eye contact with her. Rule 3. Never, and I mean never, question her orders. Mira's suitcase felt heavier with each step down the dim hallway. Through the walls, she could hear the muffled sounds of the engagement party still in progress. Laughter that seemed forced, music that felt too loud. "What about Mr. Yeong?" Mira asked. Mrs. Lim's pace faltered. "You don't speak to the master unless he addresses you first. And even then, keep your answers short. Miss Yuna doesn't like it when the help gets." She turned sharply, her eyes urgent. "But the most important rule, Miss Yuna's private study in the West Wing. You never enter it. Not to clean, not to deliver anything, not even if the house is burning down. Do you understand?" Before Mira could respond, a young woman emerged from the laundry room, her arms full of blood-stained linens. She couldn't have been older than 20, but her eyes held the haunted look of someone much older. When she saw Mira, she froze. "This is Haewon," Mrs. Lim said quietly. "She'll show you the laundry procedures tomorrow." Haewon's gaze darted nervously down the corridor, then back to Mira. Her lips moved, forming silent words that Mira barely caught. "Run while you still can." Then she was gone, disappearing into the shadows like a ghost. Mrs. Lim pretended not to notice. "Your room is upstairs, 5 a.m. sharp, and remember, invisible is safe. Invisible is how you survive the Yeong household." The door to Mira's tiny room closed with a soft click that sounded unnervingly like a cell locking shut. Mira's hands trembled slightly as she balanced the tea tray, approaching the master's study on her third evening at the estate. Mrs. Lim had been called away unexpectedly, leaving Mira to handle the 8 o'clock service alone. She knocked twice, as instructed. "Enter." The voice was deeper than she'd expected, quieter. She pushed the door open with her shoulder and stepped inside, eyes carefully downcast. The study was all dark wood and leather, the air thick with the scent of old books and expensive cologne. But it was the sound that made her pause. A child's laughter, tinny and distant, coming from somewhere in the room. "On the desk," Seojoon Yeong said without looking up. Mira moved forward, and that's when she saw it. A laptop screen showing a home video. A younger Seojoon, maybe 8 or 9, being chased through a garden by a laughing woman. His mother, Mira guessed. The boy's face was split with pure joy, so different from the cold man who now sat watching in the darkness. She set the tea down as carefully as possible, but her elbow caught the edge of a book, sending it tumbling to the floor. "I'm so sorry, Sir. She bent to retrieve it, and her breath caught. Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, her father's favorite novel. "You know it. It wasn't a question." Seojoon had paused the video, and for the first time, he was looking directly at her. Mira straightened slowly, the book in her hands. "Yes, sir. My father used to read it to us. Us. My siblings and me. In Port Harcourt." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but a softening. "Okonkwo's tragedy isn't his strength. he said in perfect Igbo. It's his inability to bend. Mira's eyes widened. You speak Igbo? I speak 7 languages. It helps in my line of work. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to remember Mrs. Lim's warnings, but there was something in his eyes, a loneliness that felt achingly familiar. Against her better judgment, Mira sat. Tell me about Port Harcourt, Seojoon said, pouring himself tea. What brought you here? Mira hesitated, weighing truth against survival. My father's fishing business collapsed. Debt collectors. My mother needs medicine, and my siblings need school fees. He nodded slowly, as if her desperation was something he understood intimately. And teaching didn't pay enough? I was expelled. The words escaped before she could stop them. I reported embezzlement at the university. They didn't appreciate the scrutiny. Something flickered across his face. Respect, perhaps, or recognition. Honesty is a dangerous trait in certain worlds. So I've learned. Their conversation stretched another 20 minutes, touching on everything from a chaebi to the philosophy of power, until a sharp knock interrupted them. One of Seojoon's lieutenants entered, whispering urgently in Korean. Seojoon's expression hardened instantly. We'll continue this another time, he said, already standing. Return to your quarters. But as Mira left, she overheard fragments. Territorial dispute. Busan. Immediate response needed. Within minutes, the estate erupted into controlled chaos. Guards mobilizing, vehicles roaring to life, every senior member of the household summoned to handle the crisis, including Mrs. Lim, who rushed past Mira with barely a glance. The West Wing stood empty, unguarded. Mira knew she should return to her room. Knew this was exactly the kind of reckless curiosity that had destroyed her once before. But Seojoon's words echoed in her mind. Honesty is dangerous in certain worlds. What world required a fiancé's study to be guarded like a vault? The door was unlocked, the first warning sign. Inside, everything looked ordinary. Cream walls, antique desk, art books. Nothing worth such fierce protection. Unless the real secrets were hidden. Mira's fingers found the compartment beneath the center drawer, just as her father had taught her to find hidden spaces in his boat. It clicked open. 4 passports, different names, all with Yuna's face. The most recent was dated 3 years ago. Lee Soo-min. Mira's camera shutter sounded like thunder as she photographed everything, her heart hammering against her ribs. At the bottom, a USB drive labeled insurance. She was replacing the final passport when footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Mira just found evidence that could destroy Yuna, or get her killed. She's risking everything while most people scroll past injustice every single day. If you're actually invested in seeing corruption exposed, prove it. Subscribe so you don't miss how this unfolds. Thousands watch these stories, but only a fraction subscribe. Don't be someone who watches evil win because you couldn't click a button. Mira didn't stay silent. Will you? Mira pressed herself against the study wall, holding her breath as the footsteps passed. Just Haewon, carrying linens to the 2nd floor. When silence returned, Mira slipped out, the photographs burning in her phone like stolen fire. She spent the next 3 nights in her tiny room, using the estate's weak Wi-Fi signal during the 2-hour window when security protocols relaxed. The names from the passports became her obsession. Lee Soo-min, Park Ji-woo, Choi Yuna, Kim Min-ji. Lee Soo-min appeared first in a 5-year-old news article. Daughter of convicted embezzler Lee Dong-wook vanishes after father's sentencing. The photo showed a younger woman with Yuna's exact features, her face partially hidden behind her hand as she fled the courthouse. Her father had stolen 2 billion yuan from a construction company, leaving dozens of families bankrupt. The article noted that Lee Soo-min had worked as a hostess in Gangnam before her father's arrest. After his conviction, she disappeared completely. No bank records, no employment history, no social media presence. As if she'd been erased. Then, 3 years ago, Yuna Park materialized. Society pages showed her at charity galas, always photographed with Seoul's elite. Her fabricated backstory was perfect. Daughter of deceased textile magnates, educated in Switzerland, recently returned to Korea. Every detail designed to appeal to old money sensibilities. But Mira found the cracks. The Swiss university Yuna claimed to have attended had no record of her enrollment. The textile company her parents supposedly owned had been defunct for a decade. Even her family registry documents, which Mira accessed through a public records search, had been filed just 2 months before she met Seojoon. Everything about Yuna Park was a lie. A beautiful, meticulously constructed lie. But why? And more importantly, how had she trapped someone as powerful as Seojoon Yeong into an engagement? Mira zoomed in on one of the photos she'd taken from the study, a still image from what looked like security footage, showing Seojoon standing over a body, his hands dark with blood. The file name read, Evidence, Han Min-jae Murder. The 15th of March 2022. Mira's blood ran cold. She wasn't just uncovering an identity fraud. She was looking at blackmail. The laundry room was empty when Mira entered, arms full of bedsheets that needed washing. Or so she thought. You're very curious for someone who's supposed to be invisible. Mr. Kang's voice came from behind the industrial dryers, smooth and cold. He stepped into view, a compact man in an expensive suit, his eyes like chips of black ice. Miss Yuna appreciates curiosity. She finds it entertaining. Mira's grip tightened on the sheets. I don't know what you're talking about. The West Wing study, Tuesday night, 2:47 a.m. You were inside for exactly 8 minutes. He pulled out his phone, swiping through security footage that showed Mira's blurred figure entering and exiting. Silent alarm. We've been watching you ever since. The blood drained from Mira's face. Miss Yuna could have you killed. Mr. Kang continued conversationally. Disappeared, like the others. But she finds you more useful alive. For now. He pocketed his phone. Consider this your only warning. He left without another word, leaving Mira trembling in the fluorescent light. The psychological warfare began that night. Mira returned to her room to find her belongings subtly rearranged. Her Bible moved from the nightstand to under her pillow, her clothes refolded in a different order. Small violations that screamed, "We can reach you anywhere." The next morning, her scheduled money transfer to Port Harcourt was declined. When she checked her account, the funds had vanished entirely. Then came the message that stopped her heart. An unknown number, sent at 3 a.m. Your sister Blessing looked beautiful in her yellow dress today. She walks home from school at 3:15, doesn't she? Such a long road, so many places a child could disappear. Attached was a photo. Blessing, age 9, laughing with her friends outside their school in Port Harcourt, completely unaware she was being watched. The second message arrived minutes later. Your brother Emmanuel enjoys football by the dock. The water is very deep there. The third. And little Chioma. Such a sweet girl. Only 6 years old. Mira's hands shook so violently she nearly dropped her phone. Yuna knew everything. Every name, every routine, every vulnerability. And the message was clear. Speak, and they die. Mira waited until midnight, when Seojoon returned from another meeting, exhaustion evident in the set of his shoulders. She intercepted him in the hallway outside his study, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her chest. I need to speak with you. It's about Miss Yuna. His eyes narrowed. Return to your quarters. She's blackmailing you. The words tumbled out in a desperate rush, with fabricated evidence of a murder you didn't commit. Her real name is Lee Suman, and everything about her is a lie. Seojoon's hand shot out, gripping her arm with enough force to bruise. In seconds, he dragged her into his study and slammed the door. What did you say? I found her passports. 4 different identities. She's the daughter of a convicted embezzler who... Stop. His voice was lethal, quiet. You have no idea what you're talking about. The Han Min-jae murder. The 15th of March 2022. She has security footage showing you standing over his body. Mira pulled out her phone with shaking hands. But I think it's fake. I think she's been... Seojoon snatched the phone, his face draining of color as he scrolled through her photographs. When he looked up, something dangerous flickered in his eyes. How long have you had these? 4 days. And you're still alive. He laughed, a sound without humor. Which means she's playing with you. I know she's threatening my family. I know she has people watching my siblings in Nigeria. But if the evidence is fake... It doesn't matter if it's fake. Seojoon's fist slammed against the desk. She has connections to the prosecutor's office, to the media, to people who would destroy everything I've built just to see me fall. Real or fabricated, the moment that footage goes public, I'm finished. My organization falls, my people lose their protection, and the vacuum gets filled by men far worse than me. Then we prove it's fabricated, Mira insisted. There has to be a way. There is no we. He shoved her phone back at her. You're a maid who made the mistake of being too curious. Go back to your room, keep your head down, and pray she loses interest before she decides you're more trouble than you're worth. But as Mira turned to leave, Seojoon's voice stopped her. The original security files. They're kept at a facility in Gangnam. If the footage was altered, that's where we'd find proof. Their eyes met in the dim light, an unspoken alliance forming in the space between them. I can't access it, he said quietly. But she doesn't know you've already broken her rules once. The tap on Mira's door came at 2 a.m, soft enough that she almost missed it. She opened it to find Dae-hyun, Seojoon's right hand, standing in the shadows of the hallway. His scarred face was unreadable, but his eyes held an intensity that made her step back instinctively. We need to talk, not here. He gestured toward the service stairwell. They descended in silence to the estate's wine cellar, a space Mira had never seen before. Stone walls, temperature-controlled darkness, bottles worth more than her family's house lining every surface. Dae-hyun checked the corridor twice before speaking. The boss told me about your conversation. About what you found. He pulled out a cigarette but didn't light it, just rolled it between his fingers. I've been watching that woman for 7 months. Something's wrong with her story, the way she appeared in his life so perfectly timed, so perfectly positioned, but I had nothing concrete. Until now, Mira said. Until now. He met her eyes. The security facility she uses is in Gangnam, owned by a man named Cho Sung-min. He's on her payroll, has been since before she met the boss. Whatever original footage exists from that night, assuming the murder even happened, it's stored there. How do we access it? You don't. I do. Dae-hyun finally lit the cigarette, exhaling smoke toward the vaulted ceiling. But I need proof of her real identity first. The passports you photographed. They're not enough. I need documentation. Something that ties Lee Soo-min to Yuna Park definitively. Something Cho Sung-min will believe came from his own system, not from us. Mira's mind raced. Her family registry documents. They were filed 3 years ago, right when she reinvented herself. If we can show they're fraudulent, we need the originals, the physical documents. Dae-hyun's expression hardened, which means someone needs to go back into that study. The implication hung between them like a noose. She's watching me, Mira whispered. She knows I was there. I know. Which is why we need a distraction big enough that even Yuna's paranoia can't track everything at once. He crushed the cigarette under his heel. The boss is hosting a summit in 3 days. Every major family in Seoul will be here. Security will be stretched thin, her attention divided. And if she catches me again? Dae-hyun's silence was answer enough. If Yuna caught her again, no one, not even Seojoon, would be able to save her. But as Mira climbed back to her room, she thought of Blessing's yellow dress, Emmanuel by the dock, little Chioma's sweet face. She thought of Seojoon trapped in a cage built from lies. 3 days. She had 3 days to decide if truth was worth dying for. 3 days, until Mira risks her life again. 3 days until she faces a woman who's already threatened her family. While she's deciding if truth is worth dying for, you can't even decide whether to subscribe? That's the difference between people who change things and people who just watch. If you actually care how this ends, subscribe now. Share this with someone who needs to remember that courage isn't comfortable, it's necessary. The summit had gone perfectly, which was precisely what made Mira's skin crawl. Too smooth, too controlled. And Yuna's smile throughout dinner had been a blade wrapped in silk. Now, as servers brought out wine for Seojoon's birthday toast, Mira watched Yuna's eyes track 2 specific glasses, one destined for Seojoon's place, another for the clumsy maid who'd been summoned to serve him personally. A final humiliation before the kill. Dae-hyun's warning from 2 nights ago echoed in her mind. She tried to poison the previous lieutenant, made it look like a heart attack. Watch the wine. Mira moved through the crowded ballroom with the tray, her heart a war drum in her chest. The original security files were loaded on the USB drive in her pocket, proof that the murder footage had been digitally fabricated, that Han Min-jae had died in a car accident, not by Seojoon's hand. The family registry documents showing Lee Soo-min's transformation into Yuna Park were ready to broadcast. Everything depended on the next 60 seconds. As she approached the head table, Mira stumbled. A carefully practiced trip that sent glasses sliding. In the chaos of catching them, she switched the poisoned wine meant for Seojoon with the glass intended for Yuna's head of security, Mr. Kang. The second poisoned glass went to Yuna's cousin, who'd been coordinating the threats against Mira's family. "Clumsy girl," Yuna hissed, but her eyes gleamed with satisfaction. The pieces were in place. Seojoon raised his glass. "To loyalty, and to those who've earned their place at this table." The room drank. Mira pretended to sip from a safe glass, watching. 30 seconds. Mr. Kang's face paled. He gripped the table edge, confusion flooding his features. 45 seconds. Yuna's cousin began to sweat, his breathing shallow. 1 minute. Both men collapsed. The ballroom erupted in chaos. And in that moment, as security rushed toward the fallen men, Mira pressed the button on her phone. Every screen in the mansion, televisions, security monitors, tablets, blazed to life simultaneously. Lee Suman's mugshot, the fraudulent documents, the original security footage showing Han Min-jae's car accident, the fabricated murder evidence, timestamp by timestamp, revealing where the digital alterations had been made, and finally, recordings of Yuna's blackmail calls, her real voice threatening to destroy Seojoon if he refused the engagement. "What is this?" someone shouted. Mira's voice cut through the panic, clear and unwavering. "Her name is Lee Suman, and everything you know about Yuna Park is a lie." All eyes turned to Yuna, whose perfect mask had finally cracked into something raw and feral. The cherry blossoms were falling the day Mira's family arrived in Seoul. She watched from the estate's front steps as Blessing tumbled out of the car first, eyes wide with wonder at the sprawling grounds. Emmanuel followed, clutching his football, while little Chioma clung to their mother's hand, overwhelmed by the journey from Port Harcourt to this new world. 3 months had passed since the night Yuna's empire collapsed. Lee Suman now sat in a prison cell awaiting trial for fraud, blackmail, conspiracy to commit murder, and a dozen other charges that kept multiplying as prosecutors unraveled her web. Her paid allies had scattered like roaches in daylight. The estate itself had transformed. Where armed guards once patrolled with assault rifles, security now carried only sidearms. The trafficking operations had been dismantled entirely, the drug networks severed. Seojoon had kept his word, restructuring the young organization into something that protected rather than preyed upon the vulnerable. Some of his oldest allies had walked away, unable to accept the change. Others, like Daehyun, had stayed, relief evident in their faces. "They're beautiful," Seojoon said, appearing beside Mira as her siblings explored the garden. His hand found hers, no longer a Mafia boss and his maid, but something neither of them had expected to become. "They're everything," Mira corrected. He smiled, then reached into his pocket. The ring he pulled out made her breath catch. A band of white gold inlaid with Nigerian coral and Korean jade, 2 worlds merged into one design. "I'm not asking you to be rescued," Seojoon said quietly, dropping to one knee as Mira's family turned to watch. "I'm asking you to be my partner, my conscience, the woman brave enough to demand I become better than I was." Mira looked at the ring, then at the man offering it. No longer the cold crime lord she'd first feared, but someone who'd chosen truth over power when given the choice. "Yes," she said, pulling him to his feet. "But we do this as equals. No secrets, no lies." "No lies," he agreed. That evening, the estate hosted a celebration unlike any Seoul had seen. Nigerian jollof rice alongside Korean bulgogi. Palm wine flowing beside soju. Traditional dancers from both cultures, performing under the same chandeliers that had once witnessed Yuna's cruelty. "Missus." Lim laughed freely for the first time since Mira had known her. Daehyun taught Emmanuel a traditional Korean drinking game while Blessing and Chioma raced through the gardens, finally safe. As Mira watched her 2 worlds merge, Seojoon's arm around her waist, she thought of the terrified girl who'd arrived here months ago. That girl had promised to stay invisible, to keep silent. But some truths, Mira had learned, demanded to be spoken, no matter how dangerous, no matter the cost. And in the speaking of them, she'd found not just survival, but something far more precious, a future built on authenticity rather than fear. Mira chose truth when silence was safer. She exposed corruption when everyone else looked away. She built something real in a world of beautiful lies. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you that one person can dismantle an empire of fear, then subscribe and share it, because the world needs more people who refuse to stay invisible. Thanks for watching Mira's journey. Now go be brave in yours.